Forgiveness is some powerful shit. And I know it's a very complicated thing. It's very complicated. And I know if you're here, welcome to my channel. I'm Aaron. Having gone through the kind of stuff that many of you have, especially when you're dealing with like narcissistic abuse and like pure evil, you know, when you're dealing with pure evil and when you grew up with that in your own family from your own parents. a lot of the stuff in spiritual communities and religious traditions, you know, there's a lot of people that will say, well, you have to forgive, and this, that, and the other, and that's bullshit. You don't have to forgive. You don't owe anybody forgiveness for anything that they do to you. And for many of us that grew up with these kind of dynamics, like that, feeling like we had to forgive and not only that, but then appease the other person and continue to interact with these same people over and over, this leads to all kinds of dysfunction, layers and layers and layers deep of problems and compounding trauma. That's what leads to CPTSD and PTSD and everything else, oftentimes. But there is this thing, especially like I'm in recovery from alcoholism and have been for many years. In the big book, in the AA tradition, in the AA and the 12-step tradition, they talk a lot about resentment. Resentment is a type of buried anger. It's a type of boundary that you were never allowed to have or establish because of your safety or your survival needs oftentimes. And that can be within our own families, that can be in workplaces, it can be in society, it can be all kinds of different places. There's so many ways that it can pop up when we weren't allowed to express anger or even just clear boundaries. Just say, no, that's not okay with me. And that shit gets pressed down. It gets pressed down and pressed down, and it can turn into resentment. And they talk about this a lot. In AA, they talk about it. They say it's the number one killer of alcoholics. I believe it's deeper than that. I believe that shame is the real problem, and shame and self-hatred, and these often stem from trauma, abuse, loss, neglect, and similar themes. Resentment is problematic for sure. It's problematic. It's unexpressed anger, and it can turn into rage, and it ends up we turn it back in on ourselves, where it becomes depression and addiction and a whole host of other, you know, mental and physical illnesses over time. But I believe shame is like a deeper, it's more of a core thing that often develops earlier in life. Resentment is more of a it's more of a problem in social terms. So it's something that would develop like in our teenage years or into adulthood. Like once we have these patterns locked into place, these social patterns and belief systems, and you know, you have to do this, you have to go along to get along and everything else, which often was survival. Often that's, you know, that's what we had to do to survive. But we can't. Resentment is a really big problem, don't get me wrong. I know it does take a lot of people back out. In terms of addiction, in terms of just mental health, it's like you can't really have mental health when you're carrying around a big bag of resentments, a big pile of anger, unexpressed boundaries that you're not allowed to have. Like we have to have boundaries. We have to have boundaries and be able to express them in a way that's safe and healthy for both parties. But especially for us, you know, we don't owe anybody safety or anything else if they're violating our boundaries, obviously. But forgiveness is a huge conversation, and in terms of, when we're looking at people who have harmed us, there's a lot of things that's just like, we may not ever be able to forgive another person for something we may not ever want to, and that's fine. It is what it is. Those people that did things willingly and maliciously, like, they don't deserve forgiveness. I don't love that word, but they did what they did, and they chose what they chose. And usually when you're dealing with like deep pain and dysfunction and family patterns, it's like these people chose that, over a period of time, years and months and decades oftentimes, and they've chosen to still not address it, and still not heal it, and still not deal with it or clean any of it up. So we don't owe them forgiveness. We don't owe them forgiveness or anybody else. But it's a powerful force, man, because forgiveness and lack of forgiveness and resentment and buried anger that we walk around with inside of our own hearts can cause a lot of damage to us. And that's compounding damage from what they did when they violated our boundaries or hurt us in whatever way that they did. And it's unfortunate because we already paid the price for their actions, and we shouldn't continue to carry that stuff around. We shouldn't have to. We shouldn't have to, especially if it's shit that was done to us in our childhood, But ultimately, like, if it's causing ongoing pain or resentment still that's inside of us, that's living in our body or especially our heart, we gotta untangle all that. We gotta untangle that stuff. And I've had a couple moments really recently. The reason this is coming up for me, because I've had a couple things where it's like sorting through different pieces and different threads with some of these people, with family members specifically, where it's like the early on stuff versus the stuff that was way later on in life. And for me, being able to distinguish, like, some of the things later on made sense, and I did have some level of accountability in them later on, like, especially when I was a teenager and in my 20s. That's when things start to shift, and we start to have more responsibility for our lives and our actions. To me, like, until people are 25, we're still dealing with children. Your brain is still forming, especially with, like, how freaking crazy society's gotten in the last couple of decades. Like, it's almost impossible, like, to think that people would just, like, move out when they're fucking 15 or 16 or 17 and be able to. It's ludicrous. It's fucking ludicrous. I mean, it can, depending on the upbringing of the child, like, if they're pretty well whole, and they're going away to school or something like that when they're 17, 18, 19, like, that's different. But to throw a teenager out on the streets and think that they're just gonna fucking live and make it somehow, especially when they've been through, like, abuse and trauma and all kinds of shit, dude, it's kind of absurd. But teenagers do begin to gain their own volition and ability to think and kind of make their own choices, physically and biologically, if nothing else. But our society in the West, at least, is way too complicated, and, like, everything now, especially with technology and how freaking crazy the financial system is and everything else, just throwing kids to the wolves it's like it's just crazy. But anyways, yeah, I've been looking at some things and not, like, so I'm having these moments where it's like I don't have to forgive this person wholesale for everything that happened across my entire life in order to find peace in my heart. I'm in a place now where I'm navigating severe CPTSD and PTSD and a lot of other shit. Granted, I'm starting to be able to tease apart some of these threads where it's like, it's complex, man. It's complex, and many different things happened over many freaking years and decades now. And parts and pieces of it, there's some stuff that I can just forgive. I'm just like, whatever. It's not even, some of it's just not even worth holding on to. And I didn't even realize that I was still, as I'm doing some of my step work right now, I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize I was holding on to a resentment about this thing. I was holding it, and it just registers as pain. It's pain in my chest, heart, lungs, grief, not processed. It's just stuff that's held onto and not released. When it's kind of low grade, when it's more intense and high grade, it registers more as like inflammation and like fire energy, anger in the brain and the nervous system itself a little more. Yeah. Yeah, and even in the body, a lot of the complex health issues that I've had stem from resentments and actions that I've taken, resentments against myself when I didn't listen to my own better judgment, when I didn't listen to God and took actions that really like effed me up for a long time. But in these complex family dynamics, man. So two things. Trying to tease apart different scenarios, like as I'm gaining the capacity to look at some of these things, I don't have to forgive these people wholesale for everything that they fucking did. For me, it's better to release the resentments that I have. It's better for my health and my sanity and my safety and my recovery if I just release the resentments as much as possible, which, it comes from acceptance often. It's like, they did what they did. They're doing what they're doing right now. That's who they are. I can't control that. I can't control it, and it's got nothing to do with me. Some of the stuff in the past might have had something to do with me and my choices and what I was doing back then, but depending on where we were at on that fucking timeline, on that scale, was I a child? Was I a teenager? Was I an adult? It's gonna give me some insight and some capacity to try to assess, like, how much of it is mine, how much of it is theirs, what do I let go of, what do I take responsibility for, and just take it to God, But the more I can release resentment, particularly, it is a real killer. It is a real pain. It is a pain in the body. It's a pain. It's a pain in the heart, dude. It's poisonous to our heart to carry that stuff around. So the more of those I can let go, whether that's through, like, I actually forgive this person for what they did, or like one layer of that I've been able to move through recently is, like, I can kind of understand. Even if I don't understand why they did it to me, if I just take myself out of the picture and look at their life and their upbringing and society and where they were at in that whole process, not excusing the behavior, not saying that this is okay what they did, that the damage didn't happen or anything else, but just taking myself out of the equation for a moment, just to hold some neutral energy, just holding it neutral for a minute and say, I can see why this whole turn of events and their life might have led to X, Y, and Z actions that they took against me or other people. When you start to look at it, this is the side benefit to that is, like, when you start to look at it, you realize this is just how they fucking roll. This is how they've operated in the world in a lot of cases. It's got nothing to do with me. And so it takes some of that charge out of it, takes some of that charge out of it, some of that pain, some of that hurt. So that's one piece of it, like finding more release wherever I can of resentment and anger and bitterness, because I don't have the capacity. I don't have the fucking capacity to hold any of that stuff for any of these people, and I'm just realizing, like, how that has compounded a lot of my issues and my health issues and other stuff that's happening in my life, and with my child and different stuff like that. Just like, wow, this is just this. It is what it is, dude. They are who they are. But I feel better when I'm not carrying that fucking shit around for them, and I'm not holding any kind of anything, thinking that they're gonna come to their senses and apologize and clean up their fucking messes, because they probably aren't. Most of them, they probably aren't. But another the second thing, the another piece of that is in certain scenarios where it's appropriate, where it feels okay, and I feel like I'm being led by God in this, is is just having compassion for them as a wounded being, as a child. It's a lot easier to do when we look at them. AA talks about this a lot too, as like, well, these people are sick on some level, whether it's like a physical brain illness or spiritual malady or emotional illness. You know, they're sick, they're wounded on some level, and they're a child of God on some level. You know, God created them, and at one point they were bright, beautiful little children, just like we were, just like anybody and everybody. And again, this is, we have to be careful with these things, because we don't want a spiritual bypass. And a lot of people in religious and spiritual communities will say you just need to jump right to this and forgive them. You have to forgive them, or else you're the bad guy, you know, and you're just gonna suffer and all this kind of stuff. Holding resentment and bitterness in our hearts does cause us pain and further damage, but trying to just, again, it's helpful to take the personal and the ego thing out of it, and just like trying to imagine, like, hey, this, on some level, this person is a child still emotionally. Like when you're dealing with narcissists and you know, psychopaths, BPDs, stuff like that, whatever happened, whatever trauma happened in their childhood froze their fucking brain development at that age, or cut off the empathy wiring in their frontal lobes and whatever else damage it did. So on some level, yes, they're in adult bodies now, and they need to, you know, they need to be accountable for their shit. Yes, I'm not saying forgive narcs. Don't ever imagine I would fucking go there. Don't ever fucking imagine I would go there. But just as a mental exercise, and to create more freedom and space in our hearts, so we're not carrying around their pain and their actions for them in our bodies. It's just like, again, it's on a scale, it's on a spectrum, so it's not, it depends on what you're dealing with, you know, it depends on what you're dealing with and who. But for some of these things, as I'm navigating and like teasing some of this stuff apart. Sorry, the camera's probably like right in front of my face. I'm on the back camera, so it's like it's zoomed in way more. What was I saying? Yeah, just imagining, just finding compassion wherever we can. You know, not just for these people, but for all the creatures of the earth, for the earth itself, for evolution, and how violent and bloody and horrific it is, and seems to be so much of the time. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of death integrated, and I don't know why it's this way. I don't know why God made it this way. When you look at the cycles of nature, it makes sense, but when we try to plug our own lives into that, and who we are and how and why and everything else, it's harder to make sense of it rationally, because we don't want to die, we don't want to feel pain, we don't want to get our hearts cut to pieces and all kinds of other shit. A lot of the stuff that happens, like, in the bigger picture, I think it's part of our spiritual evolution for humanity, but I don't know. God God's a fucking little goose sometimes. God's a little fucking goose, dude. But the evolution is happening. It's happening fast right now, which makes it that much more painful, especially if we're navigating our own shit. But anyways, this second piece, trying to have compassion where we can. Like something that I found recently is remembering not only my own childhood and my interactions with some of these people, who they were, how young they were, but starting to have more compassion for myself as well in these scenarios. It changes the whole equation. It's kind of crazy. And this is why I wanted to share this message, or these thoughts, was because of how powerfully it works in both directions when we start having more forgiveness and letting go of things a little bit more, letting go, releasing the resentment and, any kind of charged feelings we have, any kind of resentment, anger, bitterness, all of these things. When we put that into the equation of whatever history we have with this person or these people, there's more compassion and healing that flows back to us as well, through the different timelines, through our history, and into the present timeline. And as I've been doing this work with a couple people particularly, it's something I found, and I've been at this for a little bit, dude. I've done a lot of this already. A lot of it's fresh, dude. A lot of the anger, a lot of the fucking problems are just very recent. It's not like I'm holding on to shit from years or decades ago in most of these cases. But some things have come up. Where I realized that I never saw this stuff before, during my during this journey. But as I'm letting go and forgiving and just holding what compassion I can for these people and holding them, remembering them in their childlike nature. This is something Thich Nhat Hanh in particular is really good at offering practices for this. A Buddhist author, Thich Nhat Hanh, one of my most beloved teachers. His writing is something else, man. His spirit. He passed through the veil a couple of years ago, but doesn't seem like he's gone anywhere. He talks about so many of these. I'll get into that some other time, but in particular, holding compassion for damaged people. He came from Vietnam. He was a Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk, and he navigated war and all kinds of different stuff on many fronts, not just in Vietnam and in the aftermath of that, but he often worked with people that were involved in various aspects of war and healing from that. So this stuff is not theoretical, dude. It's like navigating the worst of the worst of the worst, just like with Yeshua. Yeshua taught from experience, from a horror show of occupation and military conflict and more or less constant bloodshed in his tradition and in the Romans and the whole Middle East. So it's always been a place of extreme bloodshed, from what we can see from the records. All of humanity really, when we start looking at it. That trauma lives in our DNA. It lives in our fucking blood, man. It lives in our cultures. When we can start to hold more compassion for other people and just release whatever we can on whatever levels, even if it's not wholesale forgiveness, if it's just like, wow, I can kind of understand what they did and why, and even if it's just like, it had nothing to do with me, we don't have to let go of what they did to us directly. We don't ever have to do that. But the more understanding and grace that we can offer, and the more just like letting go, man. Letting go is a big theme in AA. That it's coming up for me again in really beautiful ways recently. Certain aspects, certain things I just have no control over. Certain timelines, certain things socially and in the world and stuff like that. And it's not worth it for me to worry too much about it. You know, and do what I can. Do what I can every day in my life and in the world, but so sometimes that's not much, dude, when you're navigating certain things, chronic health issues and stuff like that. I've had a lot of resistance around that in the past 15 years. That things like shouldn't be this way, from being in recovery and everything else. Now I'm looking back. It's one of those things. I'm looking back and I'm like, wow, the reason they are this way, I didn't know I was going to get sick, but I didn't listen to my intuition. I didn't listen to God, and I got stuck in another cycle, in another loop. So I was trying to follow somebody else's advice, or what I thought my family would want or like or whatever. So I was still trying to earn their love. That's not their fault. It's not their fault, man. I mean, it is and it isn't. It is and it isn't. Growing up with pain and dysfunction, like, it is. It is. It was their choice. It was their choice to do the things they did to us, so it's complicated. It's complicated. Anyhow, what I was trying to say, what I was trying to get out a minute ago is, like, the more that I've done this in little ways, not wholesale, not releasing everything, and definitely not forgiving the shit that's going on right now, because of legal situations that have been created by these people now, and the constant endangerment of my life and my offspring. That shit needs to be dealt with. Sometimes you need justice. Sometimes it's not about our feelings. Our feelings don't fucking matter. And this is when you're dealing with narcissists, this is when it gets complicated, because they'll try to blame everything on you and say you just need to get over it. Just get over it. You just need to, or say you're not being spiritual enough. The ones that are in fake spiritual communities love that kind of shit, dude. They try to blame you for their crimes, and the problem isn't their crimes, and that justice needs to be had. The problem is your reaction to their crimes. Fucking sickos, man. Fucking sickos. But just in terms of forgiveness and resentment and like bitterness for older things that have gone on, I'm finding the more I can even bring little pieces of that to these past relationships now, it affects the timelines, and it affects me in such a way that, like, I'm finding exponentially more forgiveness for myself. For myself. And so all that good, loving, gracious, beautiful forgiveness energy, if I can just put a little bit of it into the equation wherever I can, it comes back to me multiplied. It comes back to me exponentially. And I've had a couple things where I just, like, so much relief and release of things in my heart, where it's like a lot of things that I didn't even know was in there. I didn't even know was in there. Anyways, forgiveness is powerful. Forgiveness is really fucking powerful. You don't owe anybody any forgiveness for any harm that they've done to you. It's good if you can forgive yourself, and a lot of times that's where we have to start with, is forgiveness for ourselves, and understanding for ourselves, and compassion for ourselves, and the actions that we took because we were damaged, especially when you're dealing with complex trauma and childhood abuse and shit like that. Usually we need to start with ourselves. First of all, we have to start with understanding what actually happened, because we usually have all these BS ideas in our head that it was all of our fault. Everything was our fault. Everything that they did to us was our fault. And we need to forgive them and get over it. So many people, even therapists, oftentimes will tell people that. We usually need to understand what happened, start with forgiving ourselves, and then, somewhere down the road, if there's safety, especially, a lot of these people still aren't safe. A lot of these people, we can never really interact with them face to face or in any other way. But when we can start working through this, when there's enough distance and safety where we can and it's got to be genuine, when we can't force any of these things, obviously. Just release where we can, let go where we can, try to understand where we can, hold people in the compassion of God, and remember that they were children. They were little tiny children once upon a time, and they got screwed up really bad too. And then forgive wherever we can, and not because we have to, not because we owe them or anybody else anything, but because it's better for our hearts. It's better for our hearts, it's better for our health, our bones, everything, our safety, our sanity, our forward progress. Because when we're holding on to that stuff, when we're holding on to resentment and bitterness and rage and a whole host of other things, even if it's subtle, even if they deserve it, we don't deserve it. We don't deserve to keep carrying that shit around for them. And there's only so much that you can do, too. If any of you have navigated complex health challenges and mental health stuff, things like that, all of that shit just compounds, and then anything you're dealing with on a day-to-day issue or world issues like we all are right now, the absolute sickness of all our society being exposed at a level unimaginable in our lifetimes. It gets to be too much for the system at some point. It turns into physical illness or any host of other things that can take us out. We're not designed to carry that pain for everybody else. We are designed. We evolved socially. We evolved socially, and so that's why these relationships can be so fraught with danger and so damaging. We were designed for loving relationships, almost exclusively, primarily, and having a community, having a family that helps us heal from damages when they've been caused by outside forces. We did not evolve to receive injuries like many of us have from within our families. Humans didn't evolve that way. That's why this shit is so damaging, and why reestablishing safe relationships is so profoundly healing and necessary in so many cases, most cases. Again, it varies for different people how much, where you're at with introvert versus extrovert and all that stuff, and the particular kind of stuff that you're navigating. But you need each other. Humans need each other. It's almost impossible to heal without other people, from anything I've seen. Whether we're talking emotionally, spiritually, physically, or whatever else. And just to function in the world, to function in society and in this economy that we have. We have to navigate relationships with other people. Varying levels. The more healed we are, the more safe we can be. The more we're able to have our boundaries and not have to bury it if we have been in that pattern of burying our boundaries through needing to do that because of survival. We're not going to be able to navigate. We're not going to be able to navigate safely, or even oftentimes even have safe people around. Because social predators, they tend to have sniffers for people like us, people who have been deeply wounded. Anyways, I guess that's it. Coffee time. More coffee time. Hope you guys are having a beautiful week. Forgiveness is powerful medicine, and start with yourself, dude. Start with yourself. Start with yourself. Start with yourself, man. But whichever direction you go, when you start when you start plugging it in, when you start holding it as much as you can, you don't have to go wholesale, dude. You don't owe anybody forgiveness. But the more you can, and the more you release, dude, it's gonna flow back into your life in every arena, every arena. Love you guys.